You want to be the standing? Standing. Standing? You want to try standing? Huh? Okay. We will need to wait.
Yeah, I'll be waiting. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good seeing a full room. Please come forward. Please come forward. There's a free seat over here.
Could you turn this seat over?
Maybe that one as well. Okay. C'est prête? Perfect. Thank you, Miroslav. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at day 2 of COP28. We are at the Digital Innovation Pavilion today, and we have great panelists here discussing the role of digital technology in accelerating climate finance. Before we get started, I'll introduce myself. My name is Hani Othman. I'm the Director of Sustainable Impact at the HBAR Foundation, focusing mostly on Europe and Africa. At the HBAR Foundation, we focus on providing grants and accelerating the climate markets through digital public goods. Today, we have our panelists here, which will be discussing on how we can accelerate and increase climate finance into Africa. And obviously, removing the lack of the trust layer, that is the missing trust layer that is currently there, and where digital technology can serve as a tool. With that being said, I would love to provide Alexei the opportunity to introduce himself and Evercity. Thank you, Alexei.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexei. I'm CEO and co-founder of Evercity. We are also the co-hosts of this wonderful pavilion. In Evercity, we are solving some of the most important challenges of increasing access to climate financing for developing countries. And we're using all sorts of digital technologies to enable that.
Thank you, Alexei. Annette, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, hosts, for having us today. My name is Annette Garoza. I'm one of the co-founders of 1MTN. We are an Estonian company with roots in Africa. We are restoring degraded lands in Africa by planting bamboo and implementing biodiversity management practices. And on the other hand, I'm also an international climate lawyer, helping African countries to design their carbon regulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today, Dale St. Clair. I am a 25-year climate advisor and energy banker, beginning my career at New York City Public Pension Fund, a $250 billion pension fund. And I focus on sustainable investments, climate finance. And I'm very excited that how the emerging technologies have evolved such that is a key focus across every industry, especially climate. And I look forward to sharing more about emerging technologies and how they're particularly poignant and pivotal in Africa and scaling technologies today.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Kawamada. I'm CEO of Hugamara Group. We're a holding company that invests in technology. We invest in logistics, last mile logistics, and hospitality. We are based in East Africa. And obviously, in Uganda, we started the first real online marketplace back in 2011. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Chris Maurer. I'm an architect and co-founder of MycoHab, which is a company that we started in Namibia that is taking the encroacher bush, which is leading to desertification in Namibia, and using that as the substrate to grow mushrooms. And then we're using the waste from the mushroom materials to the mushroom cultivation to make buildings. So from one process of actually debushing fighting desertification. We're actually getting a bunch of co-benefits, and in the process, developing carbon storing architecture. So that's how it kind of relates to today's conversation.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Before we kick off diving deep into this topic, I wanted to ask Alexei and focus on also the fact that he has been the first person to ever put a carbon credit on chain, on the blockchain. So having that experience, how do you view from back in the point of 2017 to where we are right now, and linking that to accelerating, let's say, climate finance going to Africa? How do you see the development of technology in there, and how do you feel that the carbon markets might facilitate that?
Thank you so much for that question. You see, back in 2017, the blockchain technology was a pretty young technology, and no one really understood what it is. And also carbon markets, they were not that widespread and popular. They were just, developing. And these were, I would say, not the best times for carbon markets. They were, if we're talking about a voluntary carbon market, it was pretty flat. But when we did this transaction, we were immediately invited by the World Bank to present this experience at the Innovate for Climate conference, where we talked to all of the voluntary carbon market members, the standards, the registries, the traders. And they were pretty interested, but they were also frightened of this technology, that they will kill their business, or that it's something that brings like insecurity and risk to their operations. And I remember the conversation with one of the South Pole co-founders. South Pole is one of the leading carbon project developers and companies in this space, Ingo Pool. And he said, hey man, that's a great use case, and that's a great fit for carbon markets, but you have to wait 5 years before it starts to mature and before carbon markets actually embrace those technologies. And that's what actually happened. We saw technological advancements gradually enter the carbon markets. It all started, I guess, with the Climate Chain Coalition, which is also hosting us here at the Digital Pavilion, which was endorsed by the UN Climate Change Secretariat, which united the first doers, developers in that space, and provided initial support. And then we saw, the maturation of this technology. We saw KlimaDAO that kind of disrupted the market, and everyone was like very excited, but also mad about this influx of liquidity and so on, but also the risk, the insecurity and stuff. But all that paved the way to the current situation, where we now see more startups everywhere. We now see more state and regional actors embracing this technology. We now see that the current monopolistic situation on the carbon market starts to change, and we see independent actors, we see new standards, new registries, we see meta registries and standards also promoted by the UN, by the Climate Action Data Trust. So it's a great and exciting time, and I'm happy that digital tech is helping to accelerate climate finance markets and carbon markets in particular. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Alexei. Linking that to Dale. Dale, you have a vast experience in managing large investment funds, but also beyond that, in terms of managing sustainability portfolios, having that particular experience, being based in New York. How do you see the link between digital technologies, the work that you have been doing and have been pioneering in, and how do you see that linking back also to Africa?
Technology is the great equalizer. And I I consider myself relatively new in the tech space, 8 years in. I'm a 25-year investor. I built a traditional asset management investment bank, Williams Capital. Today, it's the largest women and minority-owned broker-dealer investment bank as a co-founder with others, leaving to focus on climate tech, fintech, and wealth management, because going down the capital stack, meaning wealth management, is the area of family offices, it's the area of endowments and foundations. So versus billions of dollars of capital at a large portfolio, a smaller portfolio, and frankly, mission-driven investors. And that's more universal today than it was 8 years ago, and 8 years ago and before. there are always capital looking to be deployed in climate and mission driven, and it's a much broader conversation now. Technology has allowed us to form and take advantage of the blockchain, which I always believed was a great equalizer for capital markets, and in particular carbon credits, which is one of the areas that I focus in, and looking at matching carbon credits with and generating high quality carbon credits for the right projects, and linking that to institutional capital who are starved for high quality carbon credits. That several took some very public missteps, as many of you know. Disney, Salesforce, and several other corporations, including Delta, the voluntary carbon markets took a hit. It is a new market. Mistakes were made. The beauty is that technology today can address the trust layer, and blockchain in particular can assist with the transparency. So in fact, the additionality, the transparency, the permanence, which is what institutional capital seeks to address their carbon footprint. And today the laws for carbon accounting, it's in the US, it will soon be in the UK. There isn't one institution that is going to everyone is looking to take a thoughtful step in addressing their carbon footprint. Carbon offsets can be a solution, and we are in a position now where high quality carbon credits can be developed. And climate action equals trust. That's one of the themes here today. And again, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here with one of the early pioneers in blockchain-based carbon credits. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Dale. It's an honor to have you here, and thank you for that wonderful speech. Ron, you are a seasoned entrepreneur. We met in Kenya, and you shared a bit about the work that you're doing and also your partnership with 1MTN. Being based in East Africa, having experience across a variety of different sectors, how are you stepping into climate finance, and how are you viewing that from your perspective and from the location where you're at and driving this forward?
Well, thank you. My interval has been a tech entrepreneur. And we developed the first online marketplace in East Africa, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda. So we solved one issue. That is, we wanted to formalize the informal nature of trade in East Africa by creating a marketplace that would allow the vendors to make more money, allow consumers to be able to access goods affordably in one place, aggregated. We realized that actually, but there was no logistics. There was no, so basically we had to then invest in logistics using our smart technology to both map out the cities for our functional needs. We then realized actually we're aggregating the logistics now. We're aggregating both the supply, we're aggregating the logistics, and then we could be smart. How do we innovate? We could aggregate the green part of this business, electric bikes, and so on and so on. And then when we sold the main marketplace to Jumia, we kept the logistics part. And that for me has been the one that we're trialing with. We see that it's been a good business proposition for us to continue to invest in smart bikes, to invest in smarter routes. And so then obviously with newer ways to fund, I would say that I am not a climate green person. However, it's been great business for us. And when we see more partners coming into East Africa who are looking to take this a step further, right? It's not just logistics. It's about, land. It's about how we use land. It's how we get to those places. And I find that the ecosystem is getting bigger. In Uganda, it's getting bigger. In Kenya. And so that's my interest in it. We continue to invest in this space as a group, but also to learn. I've seen this trip as a learning experience. As somebody coming from logistics, coming from tech, what more can we do when we collaborate? What more can we do, especially in the context of Africa, where funding is very difficult to come by? And so even with our investments, funding has come from people who are not interested in the sustainability of the projects, who are only focused on hyper growth. And it's great to be in an environment whereby, sustainability is important. And so we are supporting logistics, we're supporting on efficiency, we're supporting now investing in how do you collect payments from these farmers, from these landowners. When MTN is aggregating, we want to continue to play an efficiency support role, like we did in logistics. Now we're coming to payments, and we hope that we can grow the ecosystem. We've played a big role in Uganda by number one investing in payment solutions. So we used to be able to collect remittances from the smallest cash holder across the country. Where one day we'd do maybe 100,000 transactions being remitted in a small country of Uganda. We think that can be transplanted through blockchain, can be transplanted to support the landowners of the company like One MTN is working with in East Africa to be able to sustainably grow bamboo and receive cash payments and remit cash payments as well.
Thank you so much, Ron. Anette, you work in Uganda. Ron just explained to us how he's working together with you. Could you share a little bit more regarding the work of One MTN and how you're actually embedding digital technologies from MRV to digital remittances to payment systems, and how that actually goes back to the local communities, and share your expertise with us?
Yes, that's a great question. And I must be honest, I think One MTN journey has been started in Estonia. So we are an Estonian company with our footprint in Africa. And I think we are the great case study here as a boots on the ground by saying that we implemented operations from the project perspective. And now with this situation in the voluntary carbon market, we are the first case study seeing that, first of all, we need blockchain solutions to either to develop projects, to increase the transparency of reporting, to use MRV solutions to be more transparent, trustable. And second of all, also for the funding side, that's also an issue because all actions needs a large capital amount upfront. And if also new technologies can solve our funding need, we are more than happy to help. And not to help, but to receive this help from different players, as we are here also looking for great partnerships. We are very happy about Evercity and the partnership so far. And so I would say that we are boots on the ground coming by implementing a project, now clearly looking that we need to become more digital and implementing, yes, we have MRV, but how we can use this digitalization to attract finance. So
thank you so much, Anette. Christopher, it's a pleasure having you here on this panel. And I think one of the practical use cases, obviously, is the built environment, talking about high growth and specifically growth on the African continent in terms of improving the infrastructure. I would love to hear more about how you are working in terms of enabling that, but also focusing on the decarbonization aspects of that.
Thank you. So buildings are responsible for about 40% of the world's carbon emissions. The development that's going to happen in Africa is astronomical because the population is so young, and the development that's required to happen there. Worldwide, we're looking at a scenario where we'll actually double the footprint of all buildings on the world by 2060. So imagine every building on the planet right now, and then double that. We're going to have to repeat that between now and 2060. So in the coming decades, the amount of building that we're going to be doing is astronomical. And with the carbon footprint of the building processes we're doing now, it's not tenable. You can't do it. So we're developing ways where you can actually capture carbon while you're doing building instead of emitting it. And the process that we're working on now that uses biogenic material converted by fungi can actually store more carbon than it emits in the process of making it. And that's what we're working on proving that. So it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to prove that. And that's why we're working with folks that are have access to these verification systems and putting it onto blockchain, so it's recorded in a way that we can actually prove these things, and we can go to customers and say, one of the main benefits of working with this material is the fact that it has this carbon storing technique to it. And so I mentioned in Africa, in Namibia, we're taking encroacher bush, which is this bush that's, basically needs to be thinned to combat desertification to create the building materials we're doing. We're doing similar processes in the United States where, my hometown of Cleveland, one of the biomass excesses that we have are abandoned homes, unfortunately. And so that can actually become the substrate for doing the building process that we're talking about. We're working with the space program. We're working with NASA right now to be able to grow buildings off planet. So there's many applications that this biomaterial technology can be used, and all of it tends to be carbon storing because we're talking about converting plants into building materials. In doing it in a way that actually has a circular economy involved, because there are ways of building with wood that are carbon storing as well. Cross laminated timber is a new way of building that people really like because it can compete with concrete superstructures, but it uses wood instead of concrete, which has carbon storing ability to it. But you can see the problem if that proliferates to a certain extent, that it's going to lead to deforestation. So that's why we think, using circular economy, carbon storing material is going to be one of the best ways of combating the carbon emissions of the building industry.
Please go ahead.
Jumping in without being asked because I'm so excited. I'm jumping in. I didn't know all of our panelists, and I'm very excited to learn what we just heard about buildings. Is one of I shared with you one of the companies I advise is a 06, which has generated high quality carbon credits designed in this case around oil and gas wells. 06 has also built a registry, and it is designed around gold standard and VCM, and with an additional layer of independent verification. All of this is public information, of course. The protocols are public. The registry is for both engineered carbon credits as well as nature-based. The 06 focus is engineered carbon credits, but the registry, one of our first non-06 carbon credit on the registry will likely be a Canadian company that focuses on buildings. And as we look at the protocols around generating high quality building carbon credits, I'm particularly excited to learn about what we just all learned here. And then, back to where this all fits in on the institutional side, there is demand for high quality carbon credits, certainly in the building space, and particularly if there's a tie to affordable housing, and particularly if there's a tie to any one of the countries on the continent of Africa. It is the technology, frankly, and the engineers that will step back and design appropriate protocols with input from all involved. And I can see on the horizon that, in fact, as I said, the technology exists, and I look forward, hopefully, to working on helping to build the first building carbon credit on the 06 registry. There are other registries, and I just want to emphasize that one of the value that the Canadian companies saw in 06 is that the turnaround and protocol for projects is months versus years, with high quality behind it. Again, this is all public information, but time is not our friend here. And I'm looking forward to learning more from others that have projects that we can help scale.
So I think that's very interesting. Thank you so much for jumping in there. And you mentioned a couple of times high quality carbon credits, right? And high quality is linked with increased financing, and that's exactly what we need in order to stream into Africa. Just hearing from Christopher about the amazing work that he's doing in terms of decarbonizing actually the way that we think about the built environment and actually providing solutions for that. What do we actually mean, linking that back to high quality? What do we mean with high quality? And how does that practically link back to the digital solutions, right? And I would love to hear from every one of you to have your input on that and the practical solutions that you're currently embedding.
Okay, I will go first. So practically from our perspective, being boots on the ground in Africa in creating nature-based carbon credits, Or thinking about high quality is actually that we are transparent. That's one, that we can prove, of course, using the newest technology, what and how much are we taking out of atmosphere, actually how much each carbon credit is creating co-benefits. Is it a bioeconomy around our project? And we need to prove it. And we also want that the carbon credit buyers understands actually what is the impact what they are creating. And of course, we need to also make sure that the data what we are providing, that it's really high quality. So
And I'll add to that. So we have, for us, it's a list of 10, and you've named several. And I'm sure that was, you were in terms of time, it was several. So I'll name a few more. High quality also, in addition, equates to permanence. That the change that occurs is permanent. I don't have to define what that is. That there's no double counting. That was part of the. Those are actually two of the issues that the Guardian article pointed out did not exist. So in fact, the protocols and the independent verification addresses those characteristics as well. The Sustainable Development Goals, I look at akin to the UN PRI goals, and I think institutions determine which ones apply to them. It is rare for an institution to have all 17. And when I advise, whether it's a family office or a large institutional investor, if they're starting from the beginning, I always say address one or two after speaking to them and understanding what their priorities are. New York State Common Retirement Fund has 9, again, all public information. So we mentioned data, we've mentioned the critical aspect of high quality is, can you define it? Can you measure it? Can you report it? And what is the ongoing? What is the ongoing mechanism to make sure that what occurred from the beginning continues to occur? And this is where some of the advent of AI. This is there's drone technology. There's multiple technologies out there that are attempting to address nature-based carbon credits in particular because of the logistics. I tend to focus on engineering solution, albeit our registry does both. And I do think, frankly, as AI has quickly resonated in technologies, is that beauty. Once there's a need, it accelerates. That nature-based carbon credit solutions, which is not necessarily, frankly, scalable today, with the assistance of AI and verification of data by multiple sources, that is one of the areas on the horizon that's poised to change.
I think many factors have already been mentioned, and our mission in EverCity is actually to help build those high quality carbon credits and carbon projects. And what actually we provide is the framework and a tooling so that the projects first understand their eligibility, understand whether they're doing a carbon reduction or avoidance, project, and which actually standard to go for. So really understand how they're doing those emission reductions and which standard does it qualify for, and which SDGs and concrete impact indicators they have to use to measure the project. And that's what our system actually helps to understand and implement. And then we are using this approach of the market forces, I would say. So on our platform, the projects can meet project developers and VVBs, so-called auditors, that would help to verify the data, and the project developers with sufficient experience that would help to build up all the documents, to check all the assumptions of the project. So it's like, all these stakeholders collaborate together, validate each other's, inputs and information, and act as a team to develop and bring those projects further up to the point where investors can actually access those projects and invest. And that's where we allow to receive upfront financing in the form of carbon forwards. And that's where blockchain actually allows to provide those forwards as a way to provide early stage financing for the projects with a high liquidity. And that's where also ratings come in. That's where liquidity providers come in. That's where MRV solutions come in. And by the interaction of those market players that are all acting according to international standards, IC, VCM, and all these new standards, and also the Paris Agreement. And that's, if we make sure there's traceability throughout this value chain, if we connect all the stakeholders according to those rules, if investors would see everything, that every action done by every stakeholder, that's how we ensure the real quality and transparency and proof that those are really high quality, high integrity credits that are helping not only to mitigate climate change, but also to improve the lives of the local communities, and that the money from those carbon credits are going back to the communities.
My view is that you cannot grow what you don't measure, and certainly you cannot fix what you don't measure. The approach we took doing our impact on logistics, the cost of logistics, the impact of logistics. We rolled out a technology called Urban Ninja, which followed delivery agents to their customers and back, and we tracked other non-delivery agents. We wanted to create a dynamic navigation tool that Google doesn't do, that only allows motorcycles to pick the shortest possible route. And we deployed this to some of our partners like Glovo, like Jumia. What we've seen is actually it has cut the to-customer delivery time by about 1.8 kilometers, almost 2 kilometers. And this is real impact in terms of real money, lowering the cost of supply chain, the cost of distribution in a country like Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, whereby logistics is quite difficult. And I think it's that kind of dynamic focus on the small things that tech allows us to do. I mean, the Glovos don't have that singular focus like we do. And I think that it is our small contribution in lowering the impact. The next step, however, indeed, in making sure we have the quality of outcome is then taking that on terms of introducing things like electric bikes being a bigger share of our fleet, incentivizing individual delivery agents to purchase those, working with global partners to actually support us to get there. It's not very easy in Uganda today to have a robust delivery system that's electric. The charging stations, the technology is still rudimentary. However, by aggregating that fleet, we think that we're going to aggregate more of the customers, and then we're going to aggregate the finance to be able to push it through. And so we're focused on efficiency, we're focused on payments, and definitely making it business, the main goal of doing this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. I don't have much to add, but I would say that one of the things to prove the high quality carbon credits is to understand the baseline and to find out what it actually is, the impact. And I can just talk about some of the things that we have to look at when it comes to that. It gets pretty complex with a vertically integrated system like we're talking about, but with the debushing that's happening in Namibia, you would look at the baseline of what's going to happen to that biomass when it goes to market, and mostly it's going to be burned. So it's going to be turned into charcoal, or it's going to be turned into fuel pellets. And that's better than coal-fired power plants, obviously, but the best you can get from that is probably carbon neutral, because you're drawing down all that carbon into the biogenic material and then re-releasing it at the end of the day. So when we come with a process that is actually going to store that carbon for long term, permanently, ideally, that's where you get the additionality and something that you're looking at. And then on the food side, we're talking about creating mushrooms in a desert environment, and this is one of the least water intensive ways of farming there is. In a country where it's a desert environment and they grow cattle, which is the most water intensive type of agriculture there is. So looking at those things as additionality, this is where you see it can become complex in the carbon credit and water storage and the co-benefits and things like that. So that's one of the things that we're we're challenged with as we're looking at these things, and why it's great to work with folks that have solved some of these problems in the
Yeah.
past.
That's exactly what I also want to address, Christopher. Maybe to leave the mic a little bit with yourself, but it's having this kind of complexity and doing that without the digital tools that are currently available. And as the HBAR Foundation, as you know, we're heavily focused on in providing and enabling these digital tools as digital public goods and providing them for all of the, let's say, project developers and investors and so on to hop into that. How do you make use of that? And how does that facilitate the process and improve the process in order to make it a little bit more simple?
Yeah, so we made a fairly conscious decision that the whole company would be born digital, that we collect all the data from what we're doing, including everything from the electric, the utility bills and things like that, the consumption of water, the consumption of electricity, and storing that data for later use. That obviously we can use that to kind of report on monthly consumption. So getting that into blockchain is obviously something that we need professionals like yourselves to work with. But to collect that data is the first step that we want to do. And then there are other technologies that I know that you all are working with that include satellite data, that we can really look at the debushing process to begin with. So if you look at a satellite, if you look at any satellite imagery of Namibia, you're going to see a lot of bush, and that's because of the kind of the rampant growth of that since colonialism kind of cordoned off space and changed the way that the animals worked, did land management, getting rid of predators, getting rid of a lot of animals for farming space, has really created a huge change in the land management practices. And so you'll see this bush everywhere where it used to be mostly grasslands and has converted to bush. But satellite imagery would be a great way to look at that change over time with the debushing process to see how well that's doing, and easily put into data collection that could be shown to our customers, where you could see basically this is the impact of what we're doing here. You can see the debushing process, which is combating desertification, and we can put that on QR codes of our mushroom products that we're selling, or on the building materials that we're selling, and then the customers can go back and see, not only was this sustainable for this and this reason, but it also led to land regeneration, and we're working with conservationists, and you can kind of see the animals start to inhabit the habitats that they originally did.
Just thank you, panelists. I just wanted to quickly add, all of you mentioned very, very important things, but now I will be addressing with my lawyer hat on. And I think that what we are at the moment discussing, we have to understand that in Africa, regarding the carbon credit markets, we are in a very interesting position. We are on a way for most of the countries to have their carbon regulations established. Alexei already pointed out actually very critical thing about stakeholders and working together with them. For us as a project developer, we clearly see that in order to have these digital innovations, all the technologies that we are today speaking of, there needs to be, so close partnership and awareness creation on a host country level. We need to make sure that with these, regulations, that they also get understanding clearly about these new technologies, how we are measuring and how they can, So my suggestion, and also, for looking forward, if we could have the same discussions on a country basis and create awareness, actually that is what is needed. And that's what I see by participating in task force meetings in different countries. We are not aware of the technology solutions, and these are the people making laws, and we can discuss whatever technology we want, but if we will not get these credits out of the host country, then what? Right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And at our Digital Innovation Pavilion, within a few hours, we're going to have a meeting of several West African countries that would discuss the creation of the West Africa Carbon Market Acceleration Platform. specifically for that. So that's country by country, we unite communities, identify their core needs, and then we strategize together on the technologies that could be implemented to bring those projects to the climate finance markets. Then, manage those projects and work also with governments of these countries in order to establish working mechanisms, not only for domestic trade, but also for the Article 6 international trade of carbon credits. And you're all welcome to join this meeting.
Thank you, Alexei. Dale, I think you wanted to add a little bit.
Quickly, thank you both for noting that regulatory, global regulatory issues, governance and compliance is universal for every market. I look at carbon credits as a source for institutional capital to address their carbon footprint and retire today, knowing it's a nascent market. I also look at carbon credits in the future for trading purposes. So it would be ideal to have a universal global standard. We don't. But having the opportunity, and I learned in September with how Africa is and the pinnacle is today, coming together to address carbon credits in Africa. That's the beginning of a solution. And I think the main criteria in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, the UNPRI standards. You mentioned rating agencies. We work with B0. There are 3 rating agencies. So the opportunity for independent verification and, frankly, participation at the committee levels to get to a universal code is ideal. But it will be a while before we do that. So having at least the language and the tools so that people and institutions and developers and operators can have a choice. That's the ideal position we're in today. And thank you so much for facilitating the conversation. And I certainly look forward to learning from others and participating, because collaboration is the key to how we're all going to get there.
Thank you so much, Dale. So in the interest of time, we are lucky enough to have an audience that is at expert level, all of them, most of them here. And I would love to engage also with the audience. So we have 10 minutes left. So if anybody has questions, please don't be shy. Raise your arm and have interventions or anything that we can get more clarity on how the role of digital tech in terms of accelerating climate finance in Africa. Felipe.
Please introduce.
Okay. Yeah. Well, hi everyone. My name is Felipe. I work for ACT Commodities. We are a Dutch company that basically advises clients all around the world on how to handle their emissions. And we are also one-stop shop, including, of course, carbon credits. That's one of the main products that we trade. And we try to find buyers, people who will be retiring these credits, right? So my main interaction is with project developers and also companies and investors, right? So that's a bit for context of my question, because I do personally believe that all the digital tools that we have, we are quite late in the implementation. And I'm happy to see that there are already cases implementing these tools right on ground, but of course there is ton of projects out there that they are not yet, they don't have the access, they don't have the awareness, they're still really behind on this. So my main question would be maybe for the panel in general, but maybe Alexei can also give some context on this. What is missing for all these project developers and also from the buyer side to really be able to scale this up? What do you think? Well, I think that you already mentioned that the government awareness and have this sponsorship by them will help. But what else do project developers and buyers need in order to scale this and make sure that there is not only the one MTN case, but there is way more projects around using the digital tools?
Thank you. You want to go first?
That's a question for you.
As a project developer, maybe you can start and then I'll continue.
Maybe not from one MTN perspective, but being able to participate in different country meetings regarding carbon policies, I would say that there are people creating carbon projects who don't have access to the exact knowledge base and also to the funds. So there are small scale projects, tree planting projects, and you clearly see that could, MRV could be a solution, but they are even not aware what this MRV is. So I think that's the quickest answer.
I agree what Annette said, and I want to elaborate a bit more on that. So when we talk to project developers, to country officials, what they actually need are two things: knowledge and technology. So it's not enough just to have a technology somewhere. And I think in the previous panel it was mentioned pretty clearly, when there is like a high tech something which is like high price, is sexy, great design, but it's not really accessible to everyone. And there is a like lower tech or open source technology that can be deployed and localized in various countries. That's another point. And we see great demand not only for the knowledge about all of these technologies and also the Paris Agreement. So here we need to educate not only on the tech, but how this tech is actually utilized for climate finance, for Paris Agreement. That's pretty unique knowledge, and that's what our pavilion is actually doing here in the Climate Change Coalition. But the other important factor is that technology should come down to the projects, to developers, and not only be something that is brought from the global north, but is something that is going bottom up from the global south. And then here we are happy to work with Hedera and HBAR Foundation on providing open source methodologies and open source technologies that can be localized and can be used to develop new use cases, new applications, and so that local players, local auditors, local project developers could develop, and this can give jobs. This can actually accelerate carbon markets in the global south, and that's what, as a group, we're trying to do here.
It's to dovetail the knowledge component, the knowledge of where the right capital is to support the developers, I think is key. Blended finance has been around a long time. Again, with the expansion of interest in across the globe in climate and climate investments. Today, we can better define blended finance, specifically philanthropic capital, institutional capital, and NGOs. In the U.S., Prosper Africa, as some of you know, is one of the NGOs that is looking to deploy grant-type capital and looking to collaborate with institutions and philanthropic capital. So there are several in the last few days solutions in the institutional space that are actively seeking projects in Africa. They have boots on the ground, intelligence in Africa, people working directly to achieve goals in their communities. And the assurance, at least the people that I'm working with, there's a constant question, and as every project is developed, what stays in the community, what it benefits the community, and are we taking anything away from the community? The fact that anyone starts with those questions who is doing and looking to deploy capital, I think is essential for all the reasons that we all know in this room. And thank you for the opportunity to let me share.
Does anybody else want to add? Yeah, please, Ron.
Annette mentioned about engaging the local host countries. I would say that from a business person who is in Africa, I think the carbon credit markets is something so alien to us. And that's why I appreciate OneMTN in terms of finding local business leaders who want to plug in what they do, payment solutions, logistics. I think it needs to be very, very clear. How do I, if I'm a business innovator, how do I make money yet big solution, right? And for me, because it's so alien to me, I know what I do as I do tech, and I do payments, I do logistics. It was easy for me to plug in on something I understand. And I think that the conversation will just need to go beyond government leaders and policymakers to include the local ecosystem of business, whether it's logistics, payment solutions, and across the board. And then the big problem of the carbon credit markets that so alien to us who are on the ground in Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania that it makes sense to us. How do I participate beyond just selling the credits? And because it's I don't even know how it works, but I know how payments work. I know how the landowners need to be paid. I know how things move. And so the big problem becomes much, much smaller and in bits doable and achievable. And I think that's what we're planning to do. Thanks.
So I know we're running low on time, so I'm going to look at Miroslav. Okay, so I was getting a nudge. Okay, so we have time for a couple more questions or one more question. Does anybody have a question in the room?
Hi, everyone. My name is Eva Kazanska. I'm Sustainability Advisor in MENA region. So I don't know all the projects very well. I know Alexei's project, but it's super interesting to hear the perspective from different sides of the ecosystem. And we all know that the market is super nascent. So I would like to ask you, and I think the answers will be different from different panelists. Like, you think we are in the innovation phase or early adoption phase of the market, and how long will it take to get to the mass adoption of the technologies that are being right now implemented with the projects?
Thank you so much for that question. I would like to ask you to keep the answers a little bit more brief so we can cover all the panelists.
Yeah, so we are still at the early adoption phase. We've passed the piloting phase, we've passed the hype cycle phase, and the hard work is starting, and we see already a lot of examples on the international level, on the national level, and there is appetite for digital technologies. There are great examples. So now is the most exciting phase where, early adoption is ending and growth is starting. I guess economic cycles are also powering this up. So we will see great growth in the future years.
So from the project developer side, I think us as well, the same answer. It's early adoption phase because we have scoped out what we need. And in that sense, at the moment, it's basically the actions, how we are implementing those technologies, which partners are we partnering with, how they can help, how we can scale up faster, and how to bring actually the case studies, the real case studies out here and to tell about them.
Early adoption, in my view, I don't think it's ending. I think we're in, and I wish it was, but I think we're right. The good news is we're in the middle of it, and it's global, and early adoption. And frankly, technology will determine how fast it is, but I'm remiss to say a number, but certainly I believe we're in the early adoption phase.
For me, it depends. We're at the infant level, right? So from Uganda perspective, only about 2 to 3% of all transactions in the country are digital. So we need to do a much better job of integrating everything that we do in an efficient digital way. And I think that we've done a good job on the marketplace for purchasing products. We've done a good job on logistics and a good job on payments, but it's still very, very at the early start. I mean, look at US, about 35% of all transactions are happening online. So basically we're at the beginning, and the more we get in the ecosystem, the more we get people connected.
I'm not going to disagree with any of the experts on this. I'm excited to hear it's early adoption. So I'm learning the same time as you, and thank you for the question.
So one last question. Wes, go ahead.
So this is maybe towards Chris a
Oh,
little bit
sorry.
more.
Could you introduce yourself, please, for the audience?
Yep. I'm Wes, help lead the HBAR Foundation Sustainable Impact Fund. My question's towards Chris and kind of the MycoHab perspective, because I think MycoHab has a unique perspective, going not just from a traditional carbon markets play and project design, but having to figure out from scratch not just the methodology, but also how to apply that digitally and to create a financial asset in a way that maybe a carbon credit hasn't been created before. Chris, could you walk us through how the digital tools enabled that, and maybe some of the opportunities that you see in the future for MycoHab, but also taking advantage of the Web3 solutions that may make your project easier to do than with Web2 tooling?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm just learning this as we go along, but we've been working with Evercity and creating a project idea note now, which is basically kind of downloading all that information that we have, figuring out exactly what those baseline scenarios are and showing how we can be, additional to that, and at the same time looking at all of these co-benefits. So it's really kind of that their process has made it really easy to look into and research a lot of these different items and get that into an idea note. From this point here, we're going to be looking for project developers. And so those will be the folks that are going to help us to, verify things as we go along, and then get this into that digital format that could be sold off as carbon credits. So, I just want to say that from an outsider coming into the world of carbon credit and blockchain and finance and all of these things, it's been very user friendly from our perspective as someone that is wearing a lot of hats at this point as a farmer, an architect, and startup company. We have so many things that we're looking at the same time. So to be able to kind of work with experts like Evercity on this has been really benefit to the workload that we have in the process that we're doing. So yeah, and glad to know that we're in the early adoption part of this, and not late to the party or anything like that.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Christopher. I think with that being said, we've reached the end of the panel, and I would like to thank all of you for your wonderful participation and sharing the stage with me. I think we've bridged a lot of gaps today, the digital gap, the financing gap, but most of all, also the knowledge gap. I hope that this was useful for everybody in the audience and everybody online, and thank you again.